And we'd like to welcome you this morning to our small business webinar. Today we're featuring our partners at Atlanta Technology Park in Peachtree Corners. From your screen left to right, we have Noah McNeely of product Quickstart. In the center, we have, between those two thorns, a rose, Tiffany Krumins, Mom Genius. And incidentally, Tiffany is one of Georgia's first Shark Tank winners, and I'm sure she'll share more about that in her comments. And then to the far right, we have Brock Kolls of Great Big Ideas, and Brock will actually be our moderator for this morning's discussion. I've asked them to talk about how they've started each of their businesses and how their businesses have actually morphed into assisting other businesses with growth and development around the area of technology and product development. So if you have questions, we will entertain those at the end of the discussion at about 1/4 till. So if you would enter those questions in the chat, and I'll be monitoring those throughout the course of the discussion. So at this point, let me toss it to Brock and go ahead and start the conversation.
Great. So Noah, maybe you'd like to say something about Product Quickstart, what you do with it.
Sure. So I've been developing product for about 25 years. I'm an engineer by education, and I'm also an industrial designer by education. What that means is I speak the language of making stuff work, making stuff manufacturable, but also making stuff something you actually want to use, more the humanity side of product development. That's the industrial design part. First 20 years, 15 to 20 years of my career, I did product development for very large companies like Coca-Cola and Black & Decker and Arm & Hammer and Procter & Gamble and on and on and on. Usually when I meet people, they have at some point in their life owned a product I worked on, which is kind of interesting or exciting. But about 8 years ago, I got a little bit burned out on that. I was managing a very large, fairly large company of product developers. All I was doing was managing people, had about 40 employees, and we were just, all I was doing was basically none of the stuff that I got into this business to do. I wasn't doing any engineering, wasn't doing any innovation, wasn't doing any of the fun stuff like working with clients. So that's how Product Quickstart was born. We sold the first company off to some of the employees. And I started Product Quickstart intentionally a very small company and intentionally very focused on entrepreneurs and startups and inventors. And I really get to do what I love, which is helping people that have never done it before get their product developed and launched into the marketplace. And
Noah, excuse me, Noah, could you move closer to the microphone?
Oh yeah. So,
Sure. So maybe you want to do the same.
Sure. So as Lindsay said, I got my start on the first ever episode of Shark Tank. I was working as a caregiver for children with special needs and invented my first product, Ava the Elephant, actually out of necessity. This little boy had a difficult time taking medication, and so I went home one night and kind of had a light bulb moment of incorporating animals into the medication process and cobbled together this weird contraption basically out of sponges and fabric and made the first Ava the Elephant. And when it worked so well on this little boy, I realized I might have had a really fantastic idea. And then I saw the casting for Shark Tank shortly after, and I applied for the show. Went on the first episode, got funding from Barbara Corcoran, and I've had quite an experience since. I have licensed my product 2 different times. It was just acquired last week by Better Family Inc. So the entire, all of my IP basically on this product was purchased, and I've learned this process basically through trial and error. Not someone like these two gentlemen who have been in this industry forever. I was brand new to it and basically had to learn it step by step.
So I'll share a little bit about myself. I had a really successful startup, a 13-year overnight success up in the Philadelphia area in the fintech space. The key learning I had early on was that we had way more ideas than money, and patenting ideas was incredibly expensive, and we had sort of just run against our attorneys who said, pick your favorite ideas and throw the rest away, and that was unacceptable. So I became a patent agent in 1998, and in addition to doing the technical role, ever since I've always done an intellectual property role. where we can work with the engineers and capture the ideas and come up with very low cost ways of doing it yourself and really just focusing on paying the minimum number of fees to the government and that type of thing. I left the company, my startup, and joined Coca-Cola. And I worked on some big innovation projects for over a decade and ran an open innovation program, which was awesome. The freestyle and the plant bottle and the contoured aluminum bottle were all big innovations while I was at Coke that I had a chance to be part of. And then in 2015, I decided to maybe, like Noah, pursue a pathway of getting closer to the technology and being able to work more closely with entrepreneurs and their ideas. So I formed Great Big Ideas and just moved myself into the tech community, into a place like Atlanta Tech Park, where I could just be with the engineers and the entrepreneurs and the startups all day long, just helping them kind of cultivate their ideas and create some intellectual property. Along the way, I met Tiffany and I met Noah. I knew Noah when I did work at Coca-Cola, and the three of us have been a pretty good fit. From coming up with ideas and helping meet entrepreneurs to developing products and protecting them along the way. So today we thought we would just have a discussion maybe about the product development life cycle and intellectual property along the way. Since we each have a different kind of expertise and we look through a different lens at it, I think it would be neat to really do. So with that, I just would open it up and say, maybe around the first contact, maybe when entrepreneurs first contact you, what are your initial impressions about their idea and how do you help them think about protecting it and I guess evaluating it?
So sadly, I hear more bad stories than good. That is because of my exposure on Shark Tank. I have people reach out to me, excuse me, from all over the world with ideas, and they have typically gone down the wrong path. Thankfully, I meet a couple that have done well, but most of them have invested anywhere between $5,000 up to sometimes $40,000 to $60,000 of their life savings into intellectual property on a product that 90% of the time they never launch. They never launch the product, and that's heartbreaking. To see people invest everything they have into one part of the process that is a million steps long is devastating. And so sadly, that's what I hear more often than not. But since I've met Noah and Brock and I've learned so much from these two gentlemen, I've been able to steer them in different directions, helping them get to Noah to redesign or whatever it might be that he does with them, or fully design a brand new idea, or Brock helping them with new IP, because sometimes people file IP, and I think we're going to get into that later, but they'll file something early on and then their product changes tenfold. They have one problem they're trying to solve in the beginning. They come up with a solution, and the solution was kind of not great. And then they go through this process and they realize, okay, it needed to be a completely different solution. And they spent all this money on a patent that doesn't even protect them. So I hear, sadly, some of the bad ones, but we're starting to kind of change that, I think, together as a team. I try to direct people to both of them, and they do the same with me so that we can stop this path of wasting money.
So about you, when people first contact you, what does it look like? What's a traditional first telephone call go?
Well, everybody's a little bit unique, of course. Like Tiffany, unfortunately, I hear a lot of bad stories, which is one of the reasons I decided to focus on entrepreneurs and startups, is because over the course of my career, I've met so many people that they have spent way too much money doing way too many of the wrong things. And by the time they got to me, it was really too late. So, I try to talk to people as early as I can. Unfortunately, that's not always possible, but I meet people that have, they sometimes, like we're talking about patents today. So one of the things that I hear from time to time is, hey, I've already got this patent. They took their first idea, they went out, they found a patent attorney who was not necessarily a great patent attorney. They were just a kind of a do-what-you-say kind of patent attorney, and they patented their idea, and they come in and say, okay, now build what's in my patent. And within 20 minutes, I've got 30 better ways to do what they're trying to do. They're going to be cheaper, they're going to be better products, and this, that, and the other. And now they got this patent, which, yes, I can build what's in there. I can help them find a factory. I can design it. I can engineer it. I can prototype it. I can fill a warehouse full of this product for them that they have protected. However, the problem is anyone can come along and do one of these other 30 better ways of doing it, just circumvent what they've spent all their time doing. So I think the thing I run into a lot is sometimes people focus more on one piece of the puzzle. Sometimes they get very focused on their invention, or they get very focused on the patent, or sometimes people just get very focused on, they have a great product name, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they need to take a step back and look at the business as a whole, because none of these things, even a great product, is kind of useless if you don't have a good business plan around it. And the same is true of patents and everything else.
So my first contact, I love hearing ideas. I just love the passion that comes out of these
He
entrepreneurs.
truly does.
They're so excited about their idea. They've had a unique experience in life. It could have been a medical thing, or it could have been an observation that they made, or it could have been, just anything. Something has motivated them around whatever their idea is, and they just can't wait to tell it, right? And so I love hearing the stories, try to help think through it, and that type of thing. A lot of them have already gone to the patent and trademark website. It's very good to get information. That website is uspto.gov. And people report back that they've done a lot of exploration. They've sort of identified about how to get a patent, or what types of patents there are, and that type of thing. I try to coach people and tell them that there's really two ways to protect your idea. One is you can protect how it looks, and the other is you can protect how it works. And so to contrast that, the Sani bottle over there would be the type of invention where you could protect how it looks, very contoured shape and that type of thing, even to the aim of the elephant, nice contour of the elephant and how it works. And for a lot of people, their ideas aren't maybe super functional, but they're very integrated into how it looks and how it works, and these enclosures, and that's very good. The other on the how it works, and that's what we traditionally think is patents, the long descriptions and the figures and the arrows and everything to try to get it. They take a little bit more to put together. As a first step though, right, it's about preserving money, to your point. To give you an idea, a provisional patent, which is one that just lasts for 12 months and it gives you a patent pending status, is as little as $75 in government fees. So that can help you stretch your budget. It gives you that 1-year time period to work with people like Noah to go through all of those iterative designs and leave the bad ones behind and not impact your budget. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, that starting point is a provisional patent, and it really starts with just taking their drawings, even their hand drawings, and just getting them into an application format and getting it filed so that they have a filing date. Helps them protect not only their idea, but they can have more confidence that if they're working in a team setting like they do on apps, that the other members on the team aren't going to start to think that this is their idea and that type of thing. So provisionals is first step, and then think about how to protect how it looks and protect how it works, and to preserve your budget. I think that's the thing, and to enjoy the conversation with their ideas. So let's move on to the
I'd
next.
like to add something to that, if you don't mind. I'd love to see inventors have 30 provisional patents, 29 of which they don't move forward with, because then you spent, like you said, whether it's $200 or $300 each one of those. Because I've had hundreds of ideas for the last 12 years, and it's taken me some time to work through each one, and then I've discovered I don't want to go to market with this. So why would I invest all this money? Why would I invest $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 into a patent that I end up basically working out all the kinks on this product and realize it's not the best on the market. So I'd much rather see that.
Just to dissect the cost of patents a little bit, right? There's really two components of it. It's the cost you pay to the government in the form of a filing fee, and then there's the cost you pay to the patent professional to draft it. And for most of us, in the worst case scenario, the highest patent fee, filing fee, would be about $850. So when you hear stories about 10, 12, in more $1,000, right? You can see how much money of that is going to the patent professional. To me, a lot of that happens because their environment is around the by the hour business, and you're paying them by the hour to work on your idea. And so the more hours they put on your idea, the more expensive as it is. And so
I think that's a really good point, to find someone, as an entrepreneur, as a startup, you need to work with people that are what I call startup friendly. So that by the hour lawyer model, that's not necessarily very startup friendly. That's very corporate approach. Versus people like Rock, you're very, very in tune with the needs of startups. Well, really like all three of us, in that they only have so much runway to get that plane off the ground. So you have to be very we have to be very efficient about how we use their resources.
Well, and sadly, they'll do what you said. They'll write exactly what you want them to write for that amount of hours, and you may not get the best product. Whereas someone like Brock.
If they followed all the legal rules, it's all, it's all in legalese now, but it's still worthless patents.
It looks good.
Yeah.
But so the guiding principle maybe is that your patent budget shouldn't exceed your project budget.
Yes.
And that if it is, then it's kind of a red flag.
And you'll probably kill me for saying this, but sometimes successful businesses don't have to have patents. It's not necessarily a requirement. I've actually met people that think, well, I can't sell a product if it's not patented. Well, that's not true. A patent just gives you the right to tell other people they can't sell.
Well, and the timing isn't as urgent as people think either. When I pitched my product for Shark Tank, I went over to California, I pitched this to a major television show, and I didn't have a patent at the time. I had it before it aired to millions of people, but I knew that this production company was not in the business of stealing ideas, and thankfully they weren't. They were an ethical company, but as long as you know who you're pitching to and that you're okay in the beginning to kind of wait it out, then do it.
I think it depends a lot on who you bring into your process too. Like if you bring investors in, right? Investors are going to ask that question. It's going to be a box to check. But if you don't bring investors in and you feel like you're in a narrow market where, may or may not impact that type of thing. Patents are one of the things though you can't go back in time and get, so you sort of have to, be forward thinking and plan it along the way and whatnot. So with that first contact thing, how about talking about cultivating ideas, right? Maybe when the first idea comes in and it's not so good, and then you find yourself.
You do a lot of cultivating. Let's let you lead on this.
Sure. So to tech is something that you both have said. Entrepreneurs are very passionate about their ideas. They've probably been working on it a long time. Not necessarily. Some people call me like the day after they have an idea, which is fine. But a lot of people have a lot invested, emotionally and otherwise. The issue is that sometimes you get so enamored by your idea, it's really tough to break out and challenge that idea. So that's where I come in. I'm very diplomatic. I try to be a very nice person, but at the same time, I'm going to call things the way I see them. So if somebody comes in, they've got this idea for a new type of coffee cup that does this, that, or the other, I'll evaluate that. I'll be very honest with them about, yes, that's great, and I like this, I like that. Here's what I don't like. Here's the problem you have to solve, or you don't have a business. There's no way to get this thing manufactured or whatever it is. What I find is really important most of the time is the problem that the inventor is trying to solve. That's in many cases, that's the most valuable thing. So they've identified, okay, well, coffee cups, they spill too often. So they try to solve that problem. Their first solution may not be an optimized ideal solution, but we can talk through it and we can get to a better solution at the end of the day. So there's two things that kind of come out of that. Well, three things. One, some people just don't want to hear any criticism or advice, and they don't like me and they leave and I never see them again. That's fine. I can't work with everybody.
Right.
On the other hand, sometimes their idea is perfect, right? Don't get me wrong. I do meet people and they've got great ideas. There's not a lot I can add. We just develop it and we run with it. But sometimes those that do need some improvement will work together to improve it and get it optimized, get it ready for manufacturing, get the cost right, get the function right, etc. But sometimes the most valuable thing I do for an inventor entrepreneur is I help them kill an idea early. Mm-hmm. So let's say they've got this whiz-bang idea and the problem, coffee cups spill too often, and the only solution we can come up with, it's a $100 solution. Well, nobody wants a $100 solution to keep their coffee from spilling. Unless you're flying into outer space with coffee, that's not going to fly. So we kill that early, and that's I think really important to how I approach things. Not everyone can say this, and frankly, there are a lot of people in product development that just need work, so they'll work on anything. I've got enough projects. I've got a backlog of projects. I don't need to try to snooker anyone into working with me if I don't believe in their idea or their business model. So, I'm very upfront about that. If I don't believe in it, I'm going to let you know I don't really believe in it. I'm going to let you know why. Here's why I don't believe in it. And I'm not being mean. I'm not trying to just to discourage people. I usually do that within the framework of here's the three problems I see. If you can come up with solutions for these problems, maybe it's an economic problem, it just can't be made at the right price, the market won't support it, or or whatever. If you come up with solutions for these 3 problems for your business, then you might have something. But until then, I don't really feel comfortable taking your money and pushing this forward. And I'm rambling, so I'll shut up.
No. I mean, he went into the development side of it, obviously, and actually changing the product if needed. I find myself, and it's because of my personality, I find myself looking at the personalities of entrepreneurs. So when I consult with people, I kind of dive into who they are. And I don't even think I intentionally did this until I just heard Noah describe his process. Mine is more of just the psychology of it, because I'm a creative person. So when I came up with this, that's my happiest moment, coming up with the creation itself and then developing it. And then after that, all the business stuff, I've had to learn and kind of force myself to be that person, but it's not my sweet spot. And so I can spot entrepreneurs from a mile away now who will not make it through to the finish line. When I meet them and they are so focused on that one name or that one design feature, and they're not even thinking big picture. They haven't even addressed, the fact that this is going to be an actual business. I worry for them, and I do that because that was me, and I went on Shark Tank. I was clueless. I had no idea what I got my investment, went home and thought, much like everybody watching, that's it. It's going to go on. And then I had to go home and actually develop it and learn distribution and learn how to work with buyers and all the logistics, the logistical nightmares that are involved in distributing a product is not the fun stuff. And so I kind of help them try to figure out, is this for you? Do you want to license this product? Maybe you do a provisional patent and you pursue the right company that's a good fit for this, and you go down the licensing route, because you might not have a personality to see this through to the end. Where I do meet people who are completely business minded and have zero creativity, and you go, okay, if you could just team up with this other person, and those are the good teams.
You two get together.
Yeah, when you meet those people, those are fantastic teams. When you've got the creative and the logistics person, the sky's the limit. But I was by myself, and so I look out for people that are like me.
So when I evaluate ideas, I'm trying to get it from a patent perspective, right? I don't have to be concerned about whether it works, and I don't have to be concerned about whether it's marketable. But I do have to be concerned about how to protect it. And so to your point about problems and solutions, some of the best patents are kind of written as one sentence. The problem of X is solved by, and then whatever that solved by is really is the invention. And so I try to find the low common denominators, right, of all the variations they have and of all the words they use to describe their invention. What is that nucleus? What is the thing that makes it happen? And is it kind of elegantly able to say something in very few words that can capture the essence of that idea? You can then, in a patent, add all the variations that you want. So you can have version after version after version after version after version, but it really comes down to just maybe 1 or 2 or 3 just really succinct core ideas or technologies. Like with Ava the elephant, right? It's really about dispensing of the medicine in a way that a child will take it, right?
Can you explain to people why it's important that it is just very focused on a few key things versus, because people want to be broad, right?
Yeah. So, in the patent perspective, it comes down to the claims. The claims are what you legally own. And the objective of the claims is to try to make them as broad as possible, to cover as much of the white space as you possibly can. In order to get to that white space, sometimes you have to look at a complete system and evaluate what areas can I not get patents in, what areas are not really that valuable to me, and of all the things that I'm doing, right, what is the one thing that's special, and what is the thing that allows me to accomplish my goal, right, that's in there, and then focus specifically on that as your core. You can still have other variations in that type of things, but very seldom do people patent whole complex systems or whole complex processes. They really focus in on a specific part of the process or a specific part of the product that is really unique that they can hang their hat on, call their own, and then they can really sort of build their technology from there. Kind of like the Intel inside, right?
Yeah.
Intel doesn't make the whole computer; they just focus on the computer chip that's there. That's their thing, right? And they own that, and it's special to them, and it's their IP and the whole 9 yards, and then all the rest of the system that's around it is left. So
it's funny because entrepreneurs don't think like that, and I did it when I first met my patent attorney. I didn't understand where he was going with my patent. He sent it back and it was very basic, like what you just described, and I thought, what am I paying this guy for? He's like basically drawing up an elephant that goes over, and he's like, that's exactly it. We need it to show that you are covering a medicine dispenser, which no one's done, in an ornamental display. And he pulled me away from the singing part of my product, actually. yes, it talks, yes, it has a button on the back, but he said, we don't want that. We want, a company could then take that away and get by with, infringing on your patent. And so it's, you have to know a professional like this. If you're going down this path, you have to know someone who has the eye for what matters.
It's kind of like a recipe, right?
Yeah.
You want to put as few ingredients in your recipes you can, right? And so, like I say, if Ava Elephant has 27 different things that it can do, you want to focus on the 1, 2, 3 that really are connected together. That
What's the core
solution?
The core essence of the product. Like, for example, Ava could still be a product if it didn't make noise. However, a syringe that sings is probably not a product if it doesn't have the element or
Right.
character associated.
You probably see the same thing in product development. You probably look at a thing and you can say, well, this is old, we'll do it this way, these are standard, that's that, and then here's the genius, right? Just right into one section in there, and then that's what takes the detail, and that's where the refinement comes. And when you test the product, maybe it doesn't do exactly what it wants the first time, and then that teaches you the weakness, and then you go ahead and you make another variation on there, right?
That's what makes me so excited about the friendship that we formed and the business that we formed together. We don't really have a business together. We have our separate businesses, but is that we have allowed entrepreneurs to do what he just described on a much smaller financial scale. Brock works with you on a small financial commitment. Noah does the best he can to develop and design and engineer on a good budget, and I do the same. And so you're not getting taken advantage of at all different, because these are the two biggest places where people get taken advantage of, engineering.
Don't point it up.
Not these two guys, but engineering and patent.
I think we took a shot.
Engineering and patent. I mean, that's the second thing I hear is, if it's not a patent that they've spent a ton of money on, it's an engineer that they never heard back from, or they deliver to them a sketch, or a 3D model of their product that isn't even manufacturable. So be careful in these two areas.
Again, you need what I call startup-friendly partners, resources, who have a track record.
Yes.
There are a lot of people out there who might have startup-friendly budgets,
Yes.
but they can't deliver.
And don't look for
So
the
you
ones
need
with the
both of
biggest,
those.
marketing spend, all the ones you see on every website,
Late night TV.
So we talked about first contact, we talked about evaluating ideas, right? Now we're into product development, right? Let's assume that we've evaluated the idea and it's a good one, it's a green light, right? So maybe where does your process start, right? When you begin?
Well, my process really starts with that first conversation, that evaluation process. So, because at that time, I'm actually kind of sizing up the entrepreneur as well. It's like, is this a person that is going to be a partner in this process, or are they just looking at me as just someone that's just going to do what they tell me? I can't help the latter. The first part, the one that's a partner, that we're going to work together to make this product better. Like the gentleman we were talking about earlier with the storage device that we're both working on. He didn't start with that. I mean, we had to work through what he was trying to solve and go from there. So the core essence of how my process begins is understanding the problem that the entrepreneur or the inventor or the company is trying to solve. And then we develop solutions for that. We work back and forth. I work back and forth with the client to identify, okay, here's a number of different potential approaches, a number of different potential solutions to this. Here's the pros and cons of each. Because they've got a lot of tribal knowledge of what they've been thinking about already with this product that I don't have. So these conversations help to unlock that, because sometimes we find that, yeah, we identify this is the problem, but really there's other nuances to the problem that they didn't tell me, because they didn't know what they didn't know until we got deeper into that process. So from there, we developed a number of ideas. We very quickly narrow that down to, okay, here's our leading idea we want to develop for Gen 1. We've taken the fluff out. We've got something we see a straightforward path to manufacturing, to production, to prototyping, et cetera. Then we go through the process. We build it out in the 3D CAD. We develop the prototypes. Then we work with factories to create samples and then produce.
So that's a big piece of what Noah said, is he sources the product. So he doesn't just, a lot of engineers will not do that part for you or don't do it well. Noah will design it for you, and then he has such a great network of factories that he's worked with for so many years that he can then go and source these for you. And that's important, because I know people I know women who have bought $10,000 airline tickets to China and have flown over trying to go meet with a factory, which is a terrible idea most of the time. And so he's got that connection to be able to, reach out to so many at once and kind of get pricing and sourcing.
Well, the other reason that's important is even from day one, I'm thinking at the end of the day, I might be the one responsible for talking to the factory about making this thing. So that's going to go into what I design and develop. If I'm just a freelance engineer that, I'm going to develop you a prototype, then I'm never going to see you again. I don't have to worry about manufacturability. So in my process, again, because you're a startup, because you're an entrepreneur, because you can't afford to redo things 3 and 4 times, I'm thinking about that production on day one.
And this matters so much because if Noah's working through a design feature, he can reach out to this factory and say, is this going to come off the tool correctly? Do we need to make changes? And these people who know sometimes even more than you, right? Because they're right there in the field, can tell you, and you're not going to get that from, the layperson or somebody that you just hire.
Yeah,
engineer.
that's exactly right.
So I tell people when the product development cycle starts, I like to meet them as early as I can, but after they've had a chance to think about their idea for a bit. Sometimes you can meet people too early where they just had their idea the night before, and then you not only become the sounding board, but it takes you 3 weeks of journey in order to sort of get to a destination.
I call those people the wouldn't it be great?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if there were a coffee shop that was filled? Yeah, that would be great.
And
I don't know yet.
I don't know yet.
Did you Google this? No.
Can I patent it?
Right.
But so I like to meet them, and I tell them I like to join the journey. I like to be part of the product development cycle. And as early as they have drawings or they have a couple paragraphs of description, that's probably the right time for provisional application. No more than a couple $100 spent on the budget, but you end up getting a patent pending. You get the protection. If you're going to be in the marketplace talking to other people on there, you feel like you have some backup on there. But you haven't really spent a whole lot of money so that you can go through the product development cycle and have all the variations along the way. The next checkpoint for me in product development is when the final drawings are done, right? Because that means that you've reached some sort of milestone. You're going to plan on getting something made. And a lot of times I can take those drawings like I do from you and turn those into a design patent very easy. So it's another way to save great cost. I mean, you're spending the money to develop your product, but now we can reuse the drawings in order to create a patent application from it. And so that's a great time to evaluate, can I protect how it looks? And in some cases you can, just based on the unique shape on there. And then when it gets a little bit closer to your product being ready to launch or your provisional getting ready to expire, right? In that time period, maybe around month 10, because they expire after 12. That's a great time to then have a conversation about, should we make a utility application? Is it the right time to spend a little bit more budget and to develop a full application, or maybe wait, right? Maybe you're not there, and you need to maybe think about maybe doing another provisional, maybe let the other one go and sort of advance your ideas. But to me, those are the 3 checkpoints along the way.
And that's fantastic. That gives you 10 months to work out all the kinks. I had to launch Ava in about a 7-month period because I pitched on Shark Tank and then it didn't actually air until August. So I had that 7-month window, which is actually very small for what I ended up doing with her. But for them to have that 10 months to work out all the kinks and get there is fantastic. For what, $500, maybe less than $500.
Yeah, and I think it's good, right? Because it doesn't impair you from your product development. You hate to say, hey, no, I can't make my mold because I have filed my patent, right? That type of thing puts the cart and the horse in the wrong direction. Then you don't get to your destination in time. And return on investment always takes longer than we think, right? And so to have hiccups in the process to get to your first sale is even
that's
worse.
Our biggest challenge, all 3 of us, is getting people to go in the right order. Go in the right order and spend the right amount of money on each step.
Clean up on aisle 3.
Yeah. And where I'm at on that stage, is basically looking at the marketing side of it. They've done these 2 parts of it, and then I'm looking at them again from a personality perspective of, have they even looked at the fact that they're going to have to market this product and actually sell it?
That's what we were going to say. So we were going to talk about marketing next, right? Because you're a zero, no matter how good your idea is, unless you can actually get it to a customer. So
that's one of the many horror stories that we see, is that someone has developed a fantastic product. I mean, it's great. It's fully developed, it's manufactured. They've got 20,000 units, which is like the magic number, sitting in their garage or their basement. And unfortunately, they weren't prepared for everything that comes after, which is what matters the very most. It doesn't really matter if you make a great product if you can't sell it. And so I'm looking usually if they're coming to me, even with a fresh idea, I'm already, looking at that end game of, are you prepared and do you have the right team in place and do you have the right knowledge? Are you trying to learn more about what you need to be doing to market this later? Because some people don't want to soak up, these types of webinars where they need to be learning, this journey, which I do kind of the hard way. And those are not the best entrepreneurs to work with. That you kind of can already see, ahead of time that they're not going to make it.
So what about you? How do you get into marketing, distribution? You do first samples, you do the whole thing, right?
Yeah, so, I'm not a marketer.
He always says this, but he thinks of the marketing. He always says, I'm not a marketing person, but he's thinking, you have a great mind for that. I mean, when you're
Engineers are like,
designing.
when engineers talk about marketing, it's like watching us play with razor blades.
What I love, in those early meetings, thinking about marketing, what I love are products that I see have a niche. Some people come in, they're like, I got a product everybody's going to buy. No, then that means probably nobody's going to buy it because you can't market to everybody.
Right.
But the ones I love are the ones that come in and say, I'm working on one now. I've got a product that is for really high-end fly fishermen. Okay, well, you can probably reach that market without spending a ton of money because I'm sure there's a magazine, I'm sure there's Facebook groups, whatever you can do very focused marketing on, which is great for startups.
Yes.
Now, if you're Coca-Cola, you got the money to market water. Everybody needs water, right? Because you can reach
Right.
300 million people if you're Coca-Cola. If you're a startup, you can't do that. So I love those niche products. Not to say other products aren't good as well, but from a marketing standpoint, I think about that as like, okay, this is probably something you can actually pull off. You can grab it. It's a smaller market, yes, but you can grab a bigger share of it. So you can grab maybe 10% of the little market. That's better than 0% of a huge market.
Absolutely.
So that's something I look at early on from the standpoint of kind of prototypes and this, that, and the other. Oftentimes, the prototypes we make, the ones that are closer to the manufacturing side, those are used like at trade shows, or we'll actually do some early samples off the tool sometimes, and those will go to influencers. Like this fly fishing thing, we may end up having a situation where they make some of these just before they ramp up full production. We'll make a few of these and we'll send them to, whoever's got fly fishing blogs out there so they can review it. And so we can do stuff like that on the product development side.
On the IP side, your selling actually starts a 1-year statutory bar from getting your patent. So, it's a critical milestone. That means you can't really go back and patent after a while.
Can
So
you break that down just one more time in lay person's terms?
So when you offer your product for sale, right, it starts a 1-year clock. And then the patent office says that if you've had your, since that initial offer, it could be going to a trade show, it could be something in a magazine, Kickstarter, any of those things could start that clock. After 1 year, then you would not be entitled to be able to go get a patent on your idea on there. And so, now you think about your provisional and having that time period run out. Now you have being in the marketplace and offering a product for sale. These are some of the dates that entrepreneurs have to know about because the door can close pretty quickly and you wouldn't even really know. And it'd be sort of a subtle door closing until somebody asks you about your patent or what you wanted to do, or you go back and whatnot. So the milestone for me in the product development when it comes to marketing is, okay, this starts the clock. Have we really thought about what we want to patent and protect on this version of the product and so on? So we got just enough time. We have one more on our list here to talk about scaling the idea. On there. So maybe when it comes to your samples are good, now comes that first big order, right? You've only lost a few pennies on each one, and somebody gives you an order for 100,000.
Yeah, well, my thing is always be prepared. The same exact thing we preach we do a podcast together and talk about this all the time. Just be prepared. Talk to the fulfillment center before you're shipping out of. If you're shipping out of your basement right now, you need to already be having conversations with a fulfillment center that can handle bigger orders. Same with your factory. Did you work with a factory to start with that can make enough of your product? There's a lady I'm working with right now who's making her product here in the US, and she suddenly got Walmart and one other giant account. And the factory's saying, we can't even produce that much. And so now she's having to scurry after she got this giant account and find a new factory and get the product made and out the door. And it's a day late and $1 short. So be prepared ahead of time to scale. Yeah.
From my perspective, with startups, entrepreneurs, scaling means a couple things. One, it is important to work with a factory that can start small and grow. But with startups, it's also important to work with a factory that is willing to start small. I think that's very important. So you mentioned 20,000. That's actually a pretty big number for startups in a lot of products to start with. So I've been very careful about building a network of factories and factory groups that will be startup friendly. You know, there's some you go into, if you're not going to plus 20,000 unit order, you're going to get zero priority. They might actually do it for you, but don't count on getting good pricing. I built relationships, and I think this is important, with factories that are willing to make, you know, some items like that big one we were talking about earlier. We're probably going to make 200 of those to start, you know, and then grow from there. You know, what I would call pilot production. You got to be willing to start there, but at the same time, you have to work with a factory that's not limited. You know, I can't work with a factory that's like, okay, we'll start with 200, but then we can only make 500. We're going to tap out at 1,000 a month. So, well, we're not trying to grow this business to 1,000 a month. We're trying to grow this business to 10,000 a month, or whatever it is. So
these relationships that Noah has and Brock has are priceless, because I mean, I'm talking to a lady right now who's trying to source her product. It's a brand new product here in the US, and she messages me on LinkedIn a few days ago and says, what am I doing wrong? I can't get a single factory to work with me. They won't talk to me. I'm like, you are not alone. This is what happens if you don't have these relationships. Well, especially right now. I mean, you hear about labor shortages. This is a fabric cut and sew, so forget about it. Oh yeah, and that's in factories too. So, and it's not just the US; it's worldwide. Right. US is a little bit extreme in that situation right now, but yeah. So be prepared and not get.
So I think like partnerships and products, you can scale your patents too. A lot of times, before a patent issues, you can file another patent called a continuation or a continuation in part, and think about other ways to do it. A lot of times there's products and apps, and maybe this time you want to think about having the app that supports your product, or you have a unique business model that comes along with it, or you've done something really clever on the website to learn about your consumers and that type of thing, or you're just on the version 2 and 3 and 4, and you can look downstream. But you can think about taking your product and begin to envision it in a portfolio of patents, how you would protect the whole space, maybe even take a look at how some of the competitors are working, and to think about maybe how you might be able to augment your product to block theirs with a patent and that type of thing. Very creative. And if you can continue to think on a small patent budget, then you know all things are possible. One of the tricks I like is to try to put as many ideas into a single application, so you pay one fee, and then these other ideas can go along for the ride until you're ready for them downstream. So those are all clever ways to do. So
we've got a guy right now that Noah and I are both working with. He's doing some of the engineering and I'm doing some of the marketing, and he actually has a great portfolio of products that he's invented. And you don't always meet that person. Sometimes people think they have a great portfolio and they bring them in and they don't make a lot of sense. But
what I love about him is they're all simple, but they all fall into the category of, wow, I can't believe nobody thought of this before.
Yes, and they serve a great industry that he works in. And then he can come to someone like Brock and he can patent every single, he probably has 8 in there at least that are worth pursuing in this way. And he may spend $5,000 or not, well, no, probably spend about $2,500 to get all provisionals on every single one of those through someone like Brock. And I have to say this, you know, Brock is somebody really unique in this space, and it's because he's had such great success with, he won't toot his own horn, but he's invented some really cool things in the past. And even the work he's done with Coca-Cola and brands like that. And he's in a sweet spot in life where he gets to sit back and really be passionate about other people's ideas. And so every time I send somebody to him, I'm like, are you sure you're going to do a free consult and talk to this person? Because I don't do that anymore. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And then they always message me back and say, oh, Brock was fantastic. We talked for an hour. He improved my idea tenfold. And so you're not going to meet another Brock or Noah. He does the same thing. He talks to people 10 times longer than most engineers. So
it's like my wife guessing, right? I've been married a long time. She still doesn't know what I do for a living. So Noah, just before we head it back to Lizzie, maybe you want to just tell people how they get in contact with you.
Sure. So my company is called Quickstart. The best way to reach me is through the website. It's just productquickstart.com. On that website, there's 2 things. There's a contact us form. There's also a self-assessment form, which is really helpful because that asks a variety of questions. That helps me to prepare for our first phone call. I'm not going to charge you for the first phone call. We'll schedule schedule something, we'll talk for a little while, see if there's even a potential fit. And, then we go from there. But yeah, go to the website, and that's the best way to reach me.
And I think I've got to speak to his website. I always do this on our podcast, but a lot of entrepreneurs and inventors are paranoid. And so they see these kind of forums and they go, he just wants more information on my idea because he wants to, he wants to steal it. And he's doing that, like he just said, so that he can look at the full idea, the big picture, prior to having that call with you and make it a more productive call. This is one person that's not going to run with your idea. We're still trying to work on how many of our own ideas.
Trust me, I've got plenty of ideas of my own. I'd love to have time to
Right.
I don't want to steal yours. There is an NDA on my website as well that's already filled out. You can grab that too, and that covers you, protects you from anything.
A lot of people can share a breadcrumb or two and not give up the whole
Well,
thing.
exactly.
That's,
Like what's not useful is sending me the form that says, hey, please call me. Because
Yeah.
I will get around to calling you, but that's not as useful. If you say, hey, please call me. I've got an idea for a plastic product. It relates to agriculture. That gives me a little more to go on. At least then I can prep for the call.
Right.
But sometimes I get those please call me, and it's stuff I can't even help with. Well, I can add.
Right.
Computer software. It's like, well, now we're both just wasting time.
Yep. So I can be reached at tiffanykrumins.com or on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you connect with me there and answer questions and help consult.
That's excellent. So you can reach me on Great Big Ideas, and it's spelled GR8, bigideas.com. And just like Noah, I've got a contact form out there. I've also got my calendar up on there, so you can arrange some time to talk about your idea, and I'd love to hear what you're working on. So, Lindsay, I see your face. It must be time for questions. Is that?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the discussion. I sat here and took a few notes myself. I never knew that there was so much involved in bringing a product to market. You did answer one of the questions that a participant had in terms of getting in touch with each of you. So we'll just go past that. But there are others here that I wanted to know and just kind of get a sense of if you had an opportunity to speak to your younger self and, looking back over your career, knowing that, taking the information that you have now and going back into the past, what would you do differently?
So I don't know if I'd be talking to my younger self. I'd be talking to someone else. Mine is that you must be very passionate about whatever product it is that you're bringing to market. I had a couple inventions before Ava the Elephant that I kind of pursued and went down that path, and they kind of fizzled. And I know now, looking back at those products, that I had zero passion for either of them. One was a toothpaste type product, and one had nothing to do with anything I do in my life now. And so now I know that the reason I stuck it out through cancer, through raising kids, through building this business is because I'm so very passionate about what I do with this particular product. And so it's my hope that people will look at what they do in their lives, how passionate they are about it, not look at the money side of it, not look at, I'm going to get on Shark Tank and make millions, but actually, are you actually passionate about what you're trying to deliver to the world?
Yeah, I would say my comments to my younger self would be similar in the sense of don't be afraid to do what you love doing. I think that's why I eventually started Product Quickstart. Now, the first several years of my career were very formative. I learned a lot doing that. Actually, a lot of that's why I'm good at what I do now. I probably, if I had that advice earlier on, I probably would have started Product Quickstart about 5 years earlier. But hindsight's 20/20. So I think that'd be my advice. Don't be afraid to do what you really like doing.
Yeah. I think I noticed for me being an entrepreneur when I was not married was easy. I mean, it was no rules and everything else. And then I shouldn't say the marriage part, but when kids came along, family came along, it really forces you to have more of a traditional discipline. And I think it's difficult to live inside your entrepreneurial skin when you sort of feel like the world is telling you to conform to, a W-2 type lifestyle for a number of years. And I think I would tell myself to push back against that a little bit harder, during that. Not that you want to disrupt the family and destroy relationships, but to not give up on your entrepreneurial dreams for a 9-to-5 job, right? There's a good friend here in town who who describes entrepreneurship as somebody who's willing to take the risk to work on their own idea instead of settling for the safety of working on other people's ideas. And so I think that hunger that you mentioned is really important, to not lose the vision and not lose the dream. I think everybody has ideas in their head, and I think it helps pull them through the dark times, you know, when they think, when I get out of this, I'm going to get my idea going, I'm going to get, you know, that type of thing. And just, I think just to focus on that. I felt a little boxed in a little bit when, you know, the family hit, and I think I could have pushed back harder on that during that time period in life. So,
but also have realistic expectations. You know, I mean, so many people paint this entrepreneurship as this rosy experience, and it's far from that. I mean, it's brutal. It's really, really brutal.
Well, roses have thorns.
Yeah, they sure do. And yeah, so be prepared to work, you know, double the hours that you would at a 9 to 5, just to pursue, you know, what you want to do.
Yeah, and then lastly, I'll ask, what did you think at the beginning would be very easy, but wound up being just an overwhelming obstacle? You know, oftentimes we ask people the other way around, you know, what was the biggest obstacle you had to overcome? But what did you go into the business thinking, oh, I'll be able to knock that out, but it wound up being something that really set you back on your heels?
Mm-hmm. So mine was the actual development. I didn't have someone like Noah in my corner. I didn't know anybody like Noah at the time. Entrepreneurship and inventing was just coming to light because of Shark Tank. It was becoming kind of a hot topic. And so you couldn't get 3D printed prototypes. You couldn't get, you know, all these things you get now. So it was figuring that out. What kind of manufacturing am I even doing? I had to learn that it was injection molded. I had to get in touch with the right factories and communicate with them well, which he obviously has down now. And so, yeah, it was just that whole process of actually making it come to life was extremely challenging.
I think it's very rare to meet an individual that can have an idea, develop the idea, market the idea, raise funds for the idea, and that type of thing. So I learned early on, particularly in my startup days, that I was very good at the idea part and the very front end of innovation, version 1. But there were other people that were much better at raising money and organizing an operations in order to field it and putting the techs in place and that type of thing. And so for me, the humbling experience about having a great idea and seeing it mature was getting into the right team setting in order to make sure that you could go the whole journey, right? With that sort of giving up the things you know that you're not good at, in order to, you know, be able to advance the ball much quicker and that type of thing. I joke that we were so good at raising money in my startup that we could just cover up our sins for all of our product development errors that we made, because we had enough money to make version 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 along the way, in a much leaner budget. Or if I'd have been on my own, the idea probably would have fizzled, because
or the ones that can't raise the funds.
you can't do it. You end up doing 10 things you're not good at in the whole thing. So do you have a comment?
I mean, I think this is a whole seminar by itself. I would say my current situation, Project Quickstart, is really built on lessons I learned by making mistakes. I think for me personally, one of the mistakes I made in my earlier company with my other partners is we just grew that company, frankly, too big. We ended up in a situation where we just had this very large machine to feed, and that became the focus rather than what we were there to do. And then so I think that's
down, complexity of business goes
the
down.
whole passion decreased, so just to keep the business profitable and running. So I would say the business I have now is really built on that learning. Now, I'm sure I'm making mistakes now that I'll learn from down the road, but we can do a whole seminar on that type of thing.
Yes, we could.
I think entrepreneurship's a lifestyle for us, you know. I mean, and I think some people, they have to make the commitment. And I even say the same thing in the music business with musicians and that type of thing. At some point you commit, you're all the way in. And, you know, so for us, we're in. There's no turning back on that type of thing. So let's see if there's anything else or.
Yeah, just one other that's come in from the audience, and it's in reference to the use of patent attorneys. What sets you guys apart from patent attorneys? You know, the services individually and collectively that y'all provide versus an individual, you know, seeking the services of a patent attorney.
So I'm technically called a patent agent. I have a technical degree, an electrical engineering degree, and I passed the bar exam. So I'm a patent agent. with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and that allows me to work with individuals to help them draft and file and prosecute their patents. So that's my scope. Patent attorneys can do the same things, but they have a legal degree and can work on contracts and licensing agreements. They can render opinions, and they can do other types of aspects of patent law that is just not in my bailiwick. So I focus on drafting patents and prosecuting patents, and when those other events come up, then relay them on to attorneys who arguably like to do that work maybe more than the drafting and the prosecution, where they can actually work on agreements, licensing, and opinions, and that type of thing. So that's sort of how the work is done. I have been at it since 1998. I don't know how to do the math, but it's 20 plus years and everything. So I see it as both an art and a science, and I just love it. In there, it was a special diamond find for me when I was an entrepreneur, to be able to have the ability to patent my own ideas.
Let me tell you how much this guy loves patents. I came into Atlanta Tech Park one morning. I'll try to keep this really short. And he had an almond joy in his hand, and he's like, Tiffany, I just did 2 hours of research on the almond joy patent. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, come to find out, they originally patented there were 2 and 2 nuts, and then it was reduced to 1, and there was a machine, and he had learned in 2 hours time everything there was to know about the almond joy patent, which was fantastic. That's how passionate he is about it. He loves the process and how it all works, and he's not doing it to make a quick buck. Obviously, at $500 a pop, he's not doing it to make a quick buck. So
anyway, Lindsay, that answers your question about the scope of patents.
One thing when I introduce people to Brock, I describe Brock as a patent strategist.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the delineation I find in my career working with patent attorneys and agents, is that there are some that are very much, you've asked them, can I patent this? Well, the answer is always yes. There's always something you can patent. The real question, which I think Brock answers well, is should I patent this, and what should I patent about this? He actually digs in with you as an inventor to strategize around, what's the protection we want here? Not, can we do it? Sure, we can always do it. Should we do it? And what should we do? So that's how I introduce Brock. That's what I see as the key difference with how he operates.
Well, thank you, folks. We appreciate y'all participating this morning. There was one point of clarification. One of the viewers asked about Brock's website. That is Great Big Ideas. That's the www.gr8bigideas.com. I think they left out the 3-letter word big. So just want to make sure that y'all had
gr8bigideas.com. So,
and lots of great information on both their websites, so you can learn from.
Even the almond joy.
The almond joy patent is on there.
And just so that our participants, our attendees know, that a recording of this session will be available on our website at georgia.org/small business. Also, it'll be posted on our YouTube and Facebook pages within the week. And we'll also include everybody's contact information just in case they missed it. So we really appreciate y'all joining us this morning. And we just look forward to working with y'all in the future. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thanks, Lindsay.